Everyone thought I was dating the popular guy. Truth is, he was dating someone else. And I was just the cover. I'm sitting on the concrete steps outside the University of Texas Library, balancing a lukewarm coffee between my knees. It's October, and the Austin heat hasn't decided to leave yet. I'm wearing a faded vintage tee and jeans that have a permanent rip in the left knee, not from fashion, but from a bike crash last semester. My laptop is open, but I'm not looking at it. I'm looking at my phone. A notification pops up. It's a photo from last night's party. Me and Caleb. His arm is draped over my shoulder, his smile perfect, the kind that makes people look twice. The caption reads, "Power Couple." It has 300 likes in 10 minutes. I stare at the picture, at the way my face looks like I'm holding my breath. I tap the screen off and watch the reflection of the campus quad ripple on the black glass. Caleb Hayes is the kind of person who walks into a room and the air changes. He's the starting quarterback, the student body president, the guy whose dad owns half the real estate in West Campus. He's also the guy who's been holding my hand in public for 6 weeks. But the truth is, when we're alone, we don't talk. We don't text. We don't even look at each other unless someone might be watching. I open my messages. The last text from him was 3 days ago. A single sentence, Phi Delta party tomorrow. Wear the red shirt. I never text back. I just show up. The coffee is cold now. I close the laptop and stand up, brushing dust off my jeans. Across the quad, I see Caleb walking with his friends. He doesn't look my way. He never does when he's with them. But he knows I'm here. He knows I'll be at the library tonight. He knows I'll walk home alone. And he knows I won't say a word. If you've ever felt like a background character in someone else's story, hit subscribe. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Now let's begin. The silence between us wasn't quiet. It was loud. It sat between us in the cafeteria, across the sticky tables, while his friends laughed and I picked at my salad. It was in the way he'd hold my hand in the hallway, fingers loose, like he was holding a prop. It was in the way his eyes would scan the room, checking for an audience, before he'd lean in and press a kiss to my temple, a performance for the hallway cameras, for the whispers. I was a cover. A shield. A piece of armor he wore to deflect questions. The real person was Maya. I knew her before I knew the truth. She was a junior, a film major who spent her time in the dark editing suites of the media building. She wasn't on the social radar. She was quiet, intense, with eyes that saw everything. She was also Caleb's childhood friend, the one he'd grown up with in the same gated neighborhood, the one who knew his mom was sick, the one who knew he wasn't actually the golden boy everyone thought he was. I found out by accident. I was in the library, tucked into a study corral, when I heard them arguing in the stacks. Not yelling, hissing. A low, desperate sound. You can't keep doing this, Maya's voice was tight. Using her like this. It's not fair to her. It's temporary, Caleb's voice was strained. My dad's campaign is in full swing. The media is watching. They want to see stability. A nice, respectable girlfriend. Not this. Not me, she finished for him. Not you, he admitted, the words heavy. Not yet. I froze, my hand hovering over my textbook. I wasn't supposed to hear this. I was supposed to be invisible. I didn't confront him. I didn't say a word. I just packed my bag and walked out, my heart hammering a rhythm that felt like fear, but also like something else. Understanding. The next day, at the party, he held my hand tighter. He smiled brighter. He introduced me to his dad's political donors. I played my part. I smiled. I nodded. I wore the red shirt. Later, as we walked back to my dorm, he stopped under the street lamp. You were good today, he said, like I'd aced a test. I'm always good, I replied, my voice flat. He looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time in weeks. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, guilt, maybe, or exhaustion. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "See you tomorrow," he said, and walked away. I watched him go, the weight of the secret pressing down on me. I was a lie. A beautiful, convenient lie. And the worst part was, I didn't know how to stop. The tension shifted from social to emotional the week after the library incident. It wasn't about being seen anymore. It was about the silence in the spaces where no one was looking. I started noticing things. Small things. The way Caleb's shoulders would drop the second he thought he was alone. The way he'd stare at his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact named M, before locking the screen and shoving it in his pocket. The way he'd sometimes look at me with a strange, hollow expression, like he was seeing a ghost. I felt like a ghost. A placeholder. My own life was on pause, waiting for his script to move forward. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. I was in the student union, waiting for my shift at the coffee counter to start. Maya walked in. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed. She ordered a black coffee and sat at a corner table, pulling at her laptop. Caleb was there, too, across the room with his friends. He saw her. I saw him see her. His whole body went rigid. He didn't look away. He just stared, a raw, unguarded longing on his face that made my stomach twist. It was the look I never got. Maya must have felt his gaze. She looked up. Their eyes locked. For a moment, the entire student union faded. It was just them. A silent conversation I couldn't hear, filled with years of history and pain. Then, Caleb did the worst thing he could have done. He turned to me. He smiled that perfect, public smile. He walked over, wrapped an arm around my waist, and kissed my cheek. Loudly. "Hey, beautiful," he said, his voice a stage whisper. "Ready for our date tonight?" He was performing. For her. For everyone. Using me as a wall to hide behind, to prove he was fine, that he'd moved on. I felt my face heat up. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. The power he held wasn't just social, it was emotional. He knew I wouldn't make a scene. He knew I was too afraid of the fallout, of being ostracized, of losing the fragile social standing his attention had given me. Maya watched us. Her expression didn't change, but her knuckles were white around her coffee cup. She closed her laptop, stood up, and walked out without looking back. Caleb's arm dropped from my waist the second she was gone. The warmth vanished. "See you later," he said, and walked back to his friends. I stood there, frozen. The coffee counter manager called my name for my shift. I moved on autopilot. I took orders, frothed milk, handed out cups. But inside, something had cracked. It wasn't anger. It was a profound, aching sadness. For myself, for Maya, for Caleb trapped in his own gilded cage. I was a tool. A shield. And I had let him use me. I had chosen the comfort of his borrowed power over the truth of my own feelings. That night, I didn't go on the date. I texted him one sentence, "I can't do this anymore." I turned off my phone and went to the library, to the same study corral where I'd first overheard them. I opened my textbook. I studied. For the first time in weeks, I was doing something for me. The fallout wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, and it was social. I didn't see Caleb for 2 days. When I did, he was with his friends in the quad. He saw me, and his jaw tightened. He didn't approach. He just watched me walk past, his expression unreadable. The message was clear, I had broken the unspoken contract. I had stepped out of my role. The whispers started by Wednesday. They were subtle, a change in the atmosphere. Invitations to study groups stopped. People I used to greet in the hallways suddenly looked away. The social capital I'd gained by being Caleb Hayes' girlfriend evaporated. I was no longer attached to the sun, I was just a planet in a cold, empty orbit. It wasn't that I was bullied. It was that I was erased. My presence in the social ecosystem had been defined by him. Without him, I was nothing. A question mark. The real confrontation happened on Friday, not in public, but in the quiet of the campus coffee shop after the lunch rush. Caleb found me there, sitting alone with a book. He slid into the chair opposite me. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask how I was. Why? He asked, his voice low. Why did you do that? You knew the arrangement. The arrangement, I repeated, the words tasting like ash. You mean me being your cover? He flinched. It wasn't like that. It was necessary. For who? For you. For your dad's campaign. For your image. I closed my book. What about for me? Did you ever think about what this was doing to me? He looked down at his hands. I thought you understood. You're smart. You knew what you were getting into. I didn't know I was getting into a lie, I said. I thought. I don't know what I thought. But I wasn't a person to you. I was a prop. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the loud silence of before. It was heavy with the truth we'd both been avoiding. I need to protect her, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. My dad, he doesn't approve. He thinks she's a distraction. If he found out, he'd cut me off. He'd cut her off, too. He has influence in her department. This was the core of it. The power imbalance wasn't just social. It was economic. It was familial. It was the threat of a future being controlled. Caleb wasn't just hiding a relationship, he was trying to shield Maya from a world that would try to dismantle it. You're choosing power over love, I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a statement of fact. He didn't deny it. I'm choosing survival, he said. For both of us. I looked at him then, and for the first time, I didn't see the popular guy. I saw a boy trapped in a cage of his own making, terrified of losing everything. And I saw the cost of my own silence, my own complicity. I'm done being your cover, Caleb, I said. Find another way. I stood up, left my half-finished coffee on the table, and walked out. The social consequences were already hitting me. I could feel the cold shoulder from the barista, the averted eyes from a table of girls I used to sit with. But for the first time in months, the air in my lungs felt like my own. I had chosen truth over comfort. And the silence that followed was mine. The week after I walked out of the coffee shop, the silence was different. It wasn't the loud silence of being ignored. It was the quiet, focused silence of my own life returning. I went to my classes. I studied in the library, not in the corral where I'd overheard them, but in the main reading room, surrounded by the murmur of other students. I worked my shifts at the coffee counter. I ate lunch alone, and I didn't feel the need to fill the space with noise. I was learning to be present in my own company. The social isolation was real, but it wasn't cruel. It was a simple recalibration. The people who had been drawn to me because of my connection to Caleb drifted away. The ones who had known me before him, the ones from my own classes and my own dorm floor, started to resurface. Conversations were lighter, less performative. They were about assignments, about weekend plans that didn't involve a party where I was a prop. It was a quieter social life, but it felt more mine. One afternoon, I was in the art building, dropping off a print for a photography class. The hallway was empty, the smell of fixative and turpentine in the air. I turned a corner and almost ran into Maya. We both stopped. There was no one else around. The tension from the student union was gone, replaced by a raw, unspoken understanding. She spoke first, her voice soft. He told me you quit. I nodded. I did. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I'm sorry," she said. "For the way he used you. For the way I let it happen." "You didn't have a choice," I said. "He was trying to protect you. He was trying to control everything," she corrected. "He thinks love is something you hide until it's safe. But it's not. It just festers." We stood there for a moment in the quiet hallway. There was no grand apology, no dramatic forgiveness. Just two people acknowledging the mess we'd been part of. "He's lost without you," I said. "Not as a cover. As himself." Maya's eyes glistened. "He's lost because he's still trying to play by his dad's rules. He needs to write his own." She gave me a small, sad smile. "Thank you," she said. "For being braver than I was." I shook my head. I wasn't brave. I was just tired of being invisible. She nodded, understanding. Then she turned and walked down the hallway, toward the editing suites. I watched her go, not with jealousy or anger, but with a quiet respect. She was fighting her own battle, on her own terms. I walked out of the art building into the bright afternoon sun. The weight I'd been carrying, the weight of the secret, the performance, the lie, felt lighter. Not gone, but manageable. I had chosen truth, and the consequence was a quieter, more authentic life. It was a happy ending, not of fireworks, but of peace. The shift happened in a place no one would think to look, the university's career center. I was there for a mandatory workshop on resume building for my internship applications. The room was filled with nervous students, the air thick with the smell of printer paper and ambition. I found a seat in the back, pulling out my notebook. A few minutes later, Caleb walked in. He looked different. The polished, effortless confidence was gone, replaced by a visible exhaustion. He wore a simple hoodie and jeans, not the crisp polos he usually favored. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me for a split second before he quickly looked away, finding a seat on the opposite side. The workshop dragged on. The presenter talked about keywords, about tailoring your experience, about selling yourself. I took notes, my mind already drafting bullet points for my own skills. When it ended, I packed my bag slowly, letting the crowd thin out. I wasn't avoiding him. I just wasn't rushing toward him. He was waiting by the door when I got there. Not blocking it, just standing to the side. "Hey," he said. His voice was rough, quieter than I remembered. "Hi," I replied. I kept my tone neutral, my bag held in front of me like a shield. He didn't try to make small talk. He just stood there, the silence stretching between us. It wasn't the loud, performative silence from before. It was the heavy silence of someone who had run out of scripts. "I ended things with my dad," he said finally, his eyes fixed on the linoleum floor. "The campaign. The expectations. All of it." I didn't respond. I just waited. He threatened to cut me off. Financially. Emotionally. Everything. He finally looked up, and his eyes were red-rimmed. He said if I chose Maya, I was choosing to throw away my future. "And what did you say?" I asked, my voice steady. "I said, what future? The one you built for me?" He let out a shaky breath. I walked out. "I have a part-time job at the campus bookstore. I'm taking out loans. It's messy. But it's mine." This was the consequence of his choice. Not a dramatic downfall, but a quiet, difficult restructuring. He had chosen love over power, and the price was real. He was no longer the untouchable golden boy. He was just a student, struggling like everyone else. "I'm sorry," he said, and this time, it wasn't the automatic apology of a performer. It was raw. "For using you. For making you a part of my lie. You didn't deserve that." "I know," I said. And I did. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt a quiet relief that the truth was finally out in the open, between us. Maya told me you two talked, he said. She said you were kind. I was just honest, I corrected. He nodded, accepting that. Thank you, he said. For walking away. It was the kick I needed. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for another chance. He just stood there, a boy who had finally chosen his own path, however rocky it was. I gave him a small nod. Good luck, Caleb. You too, he said. And that was it. No dramatic reconciliation, no tearful reunion. Just two people acknowledging the end of a chapter and the quiet, difficult beginning of a new one. I walked out of the career center and into the crisp fall air. The world felt solid under my feet. My story was finally my own. The happy ending didn't come with a spotlight. It came with the quiet hum of a coffee machine and the smell of old books. It was a Saturday afternoon, a month after the career center. I was in my favorite spot, a small, independent bookstore a few blocks off campus. The shelves were crammed with used paperbacks, the air was warm and smelled like paper and dust, and the owner's cat slept on the counter. I was tucked into a worn armchair in the corner, reading a novel for my literature class, my feet propped on a stack of old National Geographics. The bell over the door jingled. I glanced up, expecting a stranger. It was Maya. She saw me and paused, a small, surprised smile touching her lips. She was holding a tote bag filled with what looked like film canisters and notebooks. Hey, she said, her voice soft. Hey, I replied, closing my book but keeping my finger in the page. Fancy seeing you here. She walked over, not to my chair, but to the nearby shelf of graphic novels. I come here sometimes. To think. It's quiet. It is, I agreed. She pulled a graphic novel from the shelf, flipped through it, then put it back. Caleb's working at the bookstore downtown now. The one with the weird cat. I smiled. I know the one. He's different, she said, not looking at me. He's quieter. He argues with his dad on the phone sometimes. But he's present. He's actually here. That's good, I said. And I meant it. She finally turned to me, her expression open. I wanted to say thank you again. For what you did. It set things in motion. You don't have to thank me, I said. I was just done being a lie. She nodded, understanding. I'm making a short film, she said, changing the subject. For my senior project. It's about finding your own voice when you've been living in someone else's shadow. That sounds amazing, I said. And it did. Would you be interested in helping? She asked, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Not as an actor. Maybe as a consultant? Someone who gets it. I could pay you in coffee and pizza. I looked at her, really looked at her. There was no pity in her eyes, no obligation. Just a genuine offer of collaboration, of seeing me as a person with a perspective worth having. I'd like that, I said, and the smile that spread across my face felt real, unforced. I'd really like that. We talked for a while longer, not about Caleb, but about films, about classes, about the best places to study on campus. It was easy. It was real. When she left, I stayed in the armchair, watching the dust motes dance in the late afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew who it was. Hey. It's Caleb. Just wanted to say. I heard about Maya's film thing. She's lucky to have you. And I'm sorry. For everything. I read the message. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The apology was for him, not for me. My peace was already here, in this quiet bookstore, in the promise of a new project, in the simple, earned trust of a new friend. I put my phone away, picked up my book, and lost myself in the story again. The world outside was still turning, but inside, everything was finally, quietly, in its right place. Thank you for listening. If you've ever felt like a background character, remember that your story is yours to write. Hit subscribe for more stories like this, and let me know where you're watching from in the comments.